nanoneedles. Well, since they're metallic, you can coat them with a layer of polymer, cut the end, and you will obtain some kind of nanoscale analog of electrical cable. So we have an insulating layer and conducting core. So after that, this kind of nanoscale electrical cables can be used for electrochemical measurements inside the living cells. So this is basically yeast cell, single yeast cell inside the SEM. So why we chose yeast cell? Because normal tissue cells would explode in the SEM because of high vacuum, but yeast cell would survive it. So we chose yeast cell. But for electrochemistry, we obviously need two probes to do the measurement. So this is our next step. So far it's under development. Next part of my talk, again about self-assembly, slightly different nanostructures and slightly different applications. So these are examples of self-assembly of gold nanoparticles on the surface of nanowires. Generally, how nanowires are grown. This is a mat of nanowires fabricated in the standard tubular furnace under high temperature, about 900 Celsius. Normally, they're obtained by decomposition of ammonia. If we speak about gallium nitride, this is decomposition of ammonia in presence of gallium. So in this case, if you put small quartz wafer inside the tubular furnace, ammonia will decompose into nitrogen and hydrogen. Hydrogen will evaporate as a light gas, and nitrogen will react with gallium, forming this kind of nanowires. The next step, sample with nanowires is immersed into chemical vapor deposition system, and where we evaporate precursor of gold, which is basically salt of gold or different chemicals containing gold. And hot precursor will form a bloom of gold plasma. And those nanostructures, gold nanoparticles, they grow from gold plasma under in hot environment. And these are some brief models of how gold nanoparticles grow. Again, since it's a hot environment, you have lots of gold atoms available. They grow in the form of cubottahedrons. This is a single cubottahedron crystal, and I marked this standard surfaces in terms of crystal directions, Blake 100 and 111. So again, I would like you to think about that as a droplet on the surface, on the hard surface. So normally a droplet on the hard surface takes spherical shape or shape of spherical segment, depending on hydrophobic or hydrophilic surface. Here it's expressed in different terms, let's say adhesion energy and surface energy, but this is exactly the same process for the most part. So if adhesion energy is much smaller than surface energy, you will get almost complete spherical shape on the surface. If they are equal, you will get half of the sphere. And this is basically how nanowire coated with nanoparticles looks like. Why we need those kind of nanostructures and why they're so applicable. In general, nanowires or any kind of extended nanomaterials, they have very high surface to volume ratio, which means that any changes in the surrounding environment will affect electrical properties of these structures. So to measure these changes, to turn them into electrical signals, to analyze the environment, we should put these nanowires, or mat of nanowires, into electrical circuit. Obviously, you inject some gas. This gas will affect the surface of nanowires, change electrical properties. We will see it as an electrical signal on the surface. However, there is a certain difficulty with gallium nitride nanowires because they're very chemically inert, so they normally ignore chemically active environment. So we need to activate them somehow, to functionalize them. And this is where gold nanoparticles come into play. So gold nanoparticles absorb all sorts of gases very efficiently, and they work as a transmitter between the chemicals in the environment and the electrical properties of nanowires. So another good thing about that, since it's inert material, after heating up this sample or pumping it down at the high vacuum, effect of chemicals disappear completely, so it's totally reversible sensing. You can use it several times, and properties won't change permanently. Well, this is basically the facility I was talking about with faculty members today. This is the facility I would use for my experiments in the future, which is not that expensive in general. It involves a system of vacuum pumps, small vacuum chamber, some source measure units, lock-in amplifier, multimeter, and a computer basically, with some software like LabVIEW or Test Point. And this is how the device looks like. So this is a mat of nanowires with gold leads on the top. And I usually use 4-terminal measurements to avoid issues with contacts, to make sure that we measure properties of nanowires, not properties of contacts between the leads and nanowires. So this is pretty straightforward design. And now I'm going to speak about mechanism of sensing. So this plot represents experimental results. So top curve is the result under vacuum when we don't have any environment in the gas chamber. Then we inject hydrogen and see drop of conductivity. Not a big drop, but definitely a reduction. Then pure CO. Pure CO affects it more significantly. But the most important thing is that this is kind of digital sensing. When I say digital sensing, I mean that this is the way to detect presence, not quantity. Because if you inject even a little bit of hydrogen or a little bit of CO, you reach saturation almost instantly. So adding CO won't change this drop in conductivity. However, if you add water to carbon monoxide, you will get analog sensing, not digital, which means that you add more and more water, you will see higher and higher drop in conductivity, which means that you observe additional effects, not just absorption. So this is the mechanism of sensing, and it was explained in some of my papers. So when you grow nanoparticle on the surface of the nanowire, it forms the depletion region right below it. It's so-called nanoscale Schottky contact. Because depletion, the nature of depletion region is to put system in thermodynamic equilibrium, you need to equilibrate Fermi levels on the side of nanoparticle and on the side of nanowire. In this case, you form potential barrier for electrons. And electrons move from the side of, in the case of N-type semiconductor, which is gallium nitride, electrons move from semiconductor into gold nanoparticle and form this depleted region. What happened after that when you